Can the Fed and our politicians engineer a soft landing for the economy, or are we doomed to crash and burn? Hello again, this is Douglas Lucky Larson on the Retire Early and Often channel. And today we're talking about the promises and lies of politicians and federal and global bankers regarding the economy and whether they can engineer the promised soft landing or if we will see another Great Recession or even depression. Stay tuned to the end to see 4 important steps you can take no matter what happens. First, let's look at a recent article talking about what a quote soft landing really means, and also what might happen if we don't get a soft landing. I love this quote from Ben Bernanke, former Fed chair. If making monetary policy is like driving a car, then the car is one with an unreliable speedometer, a foggy windshield, and a tendency to respond unpredictably and with a delay to the brake and accelerator. Great quote from Ben Bernanke. And some people call him quite a hypocrite because he engineered a bit of a hard landing last time. Mr. Vijay Kumar, chief investment strategist and an author of this article, says this: implementing monetary policy to produce the desired results is a challenging task. You think? Yes. The task becomes Herculean when the economy and markets face too many headwinds in a volatile and turbulent environment. You can say that again, and we certainly have that. A couple more lines here from Vijay Kumar. The foremost factor determining the direction of equity markets globally in the coming weeks and months will be the intensity of the monetary tightening by the Fed and its impact on the U.S. economy and thereby on the global economy. The Fed has been decisively proved wrong, yes, in its transient inflation theory, with inflation remaining persistent. Yeah, we had a couple of bad reads. I think it was 8.5, and then it was 8.3, and then just recently we had the June report, which is actually up through May, and that was 8.6, highest that we've seen in 4 decades. But hey, who's counting? And that's the official numbers. We all know that for most people, they're feeling a little more pinch than even that because of some other things that aren't showing up yet, or they just simply leave out or substitute. Here it is. The million-dollar question is, will the Fed succeed in soft landing the economy? That is, taming inflation without triggering a recession or sharp economic downturn. Here, the Fed's track record is mixed. There has been 13 Fed rate hike cycles since World War II. Most monetary tightening cycles ended up sharply slowing down the economy, even landing the economy in recessions. That talks about Paul Volcker's aggressive rate hikes from 11% in June of 79 to 20% in June of 81. And it did break the back of inflation. Yes, there's some people that would argue that it was other factors as well, but let's face it, when you push up interest rates to super high levels, people borrow less and spend less, and it brings down demand, and there you go. It can help with inflation. There have also been successful soft landings too, and it calls on the one by Alan Greenspan, who raised interest rates from 3% to 6% in 1994 without triggering a true recession. But we did just basically kick the can down the road, and in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had the giant dot-com bubble that burst, and some people blame Greenspan for that. All right, well, bottom line is, can the Fed engineer this soft landing to reduce the excess consumer demand and thus inflation, but not create a recession? High unemployment, stock market meltdown. I mean, we've seen some pullbacks. They're calling it an official bear market as of halfway through June here. or a crash and destruction of the pension funds all around the country. And, let's not forget about the potential destruction of the wealth effect that is created with a real estate bubble that we seem to be in. Well, when the Fed and politicians talk about a soft landing, in their own minds, they are already taking a victory lap for all the previous, even recessions that we've had in the last 40, 50, 60 years. Again, Paul Volcker in the 70s and 80s, Alan Greenspan in the 90s, Ben Bernanke in the last recession, or even Jay Powell in the last couple years. How can they take a victory lap? Well, they think that they have avoided a Great Depression like we had in the 1930s, and they think they've been successful with their little pushing and pulling on interest rates and all the different levers that they have. They're willing to do a lot more things too, which we've talked about in some other videos. Whether that's wage controls or price controls. They don't work out so well in the end, but again, if they can avoid this Great Depression, they feel like we've been successful. They think that, sure, we had some recessions and, we had to do some bailouts and there were some bankruptcies and foreclosures, but, we didn't have a total meltdown of civilization, so we must have done things right, right? Maybe. Many people compare the so-called Great Recession of 2008, 9, and 10 to the Great Depression of the 1930s. But let's get real. The GFC, or Great Financial Crisis, of 12 and 14 years ago, it was not even close to the hard times experienced in the decade of the Great Depression, the 1930s. 2008, 9, and 10, it was a rough time. And I have a couple of brothers that lost their jobs and their homes. But there are safety nets in place, like Social Security that wasn't around back in the 30s, disability insurance, welfare, loan modifications, and as we've seen during COVID, many other things like moratoriums and stimulus programs that simply were not around in the 1930s. In the 1930s, after the big stock market crash of 1929 and then drought and famine and the Dust Bowl of the Midwest, people were literally starving in this country and living in tents. Not just a few hundred homeless people like you can find in many large cities, but thousands and thousands of people, whole families with no place to live. They built lean-to shacks out of whatever stray lumber and cardboard they could find. And because President Hoover was in office at the time, they called them Hoovervilles. Yikes. There was officially 25% unemployment. And that does not count that women didn't really work in those days. And many people were underemployed if they did have a job, and they were just barely squeaking by. With no or low income and no safety nets, we have photos like these. I mean, can you see this? People were lined up just for soup or, donuts and coffee. Want a job. Oh, why can't you give my dad a job? Look at all these sad people. Love this. 4 children for sale. Inquire within. Don't know if that was serious or not. We talk about human trafficking today, but man, I wonder what I could get for my kids. Anyway, sad times, tough times, and yeah, we're not there in this country. Now, I remember seeing in 2009, there were some lines all right, but they weren't lined up for, basic essentials and soup. They were lined up for the latest Harry Potter movie or the newest iPhone. Now, I'm not saying that people weren't hurting in the GFC, but nothing close to the 1930s. And right now, with everybody complaining about how expensive houses are and rising costs for food and fuel and rent, we know those things are real, but many millennials and Gen Zers still have so much free time that they sit around debating what gender is and getting offended if you don't use their right pronoun. And way too many people actually care about what's going on with the Kardashians or the aftermath of the Johnny Depp trial. Really? And way too many people get way too caught up in things like the big slap at the Oscars just a couple months ago. Seriously, are those the biggest problems that we have right now? We've got young people that are screaming for student loan debt forgiveness, but many of them didn't get a marketable degree. Hello? Now, I know I sound like a grumpy old boomer, but let's get real here. I'm a Gen Xer. We don't get talked about as much as the, baby boomer generation and then the younger generations, Gen Z and the millennials. But I did learn a couple things in my 50-something years of life. First, get some real education and some real skills and invent something or manufacture something or offer an essential and useful service that real people actually want. Quit playing with doggy coins and GameStop and NFTs of fishes or monkeys. Real wealth is created when we also create real goods and essential services. So, enough of that rant. Back to the main topic. Can we get a soft landing? Or are we headed for a crash of a lifetime? I love Jason Hartman's excellent content on YouTube, and he often asks, compared to what? Well, compared to the Great Depression, where people lost everything and literally ate dirt, yes, I believe we'll have a much softer landing than that. However, will cryptocurrency continue to be volatile, maybe lose some more value? Yes, I think so. My holdings in Ethereum are sure breaking my heart about now. Will real estate begin to cool? Well, I think we're seeing it in some areas, but certainly I don't foresee a crash in nominal terms, at least not yet. Now, I've discussed that in previous videos, and I'll give you an updated prediction on the markets in a few days. For now, I'll just say that I'm not selling my rental properties in a panic. I love collecting rent each month, and so far, my tenants seem very happy for a nice place to live. Now, will some businesses go bankrupt in the next few years? Oh yeah, I think so. And it's actually a sign of a healthy market when bad actors and bad ideas and sketchy business models get shaken out of the economy and better ideas can come to the surface. Will some employees lose their jobs? Yes. We're not really seeing mass layoffs yet, and some industries still can't hire enough people. But in a recession, many people do lose their jobs. So, what can you do to be a little more prepared for whatever is coming? First, I say, secure your income, whether that's being an incredible employee and or picking up a side hustle and or learning some other new skills. Next, secure your housing, whether that's signing a long lease or locking down a house payment on a really low interest rate mortgage. And hopefully that's on a property that might give you some flexibility to rent out a basement or a room or two, just in case we see some trouble in the near future. And I know that interest rates are going up, but historically speaking, 5 or 6%, or a 7-year ARM at maybe 4%, that's not very high, just to let you know. Next, I would also stock up on some extra food and water and other supplies. Finally, strengthen your relationships, starting within your own family and neighborhood, and maybe a church group or a gardening club. Relationships are always the key to happiness, and they are the best support system when a hurricane or earthquake comes and literally shakes your foundation. Chris Martenson and Adam Taggart, they have a great book called Prosper. It's a must read, especially in times like this. They talk about 8 forms of capital that help us to prosper and be resilient even in tough times. 2 of those forms of capital are social and cultural capital. The tribe that you are a part of and the social connections and trusted circle of friends and family that you create is often way more important than all the money and physical resources that you can possibly amass. If you are a billionaire with a giant wall and a barbed wire fence, and you're sitting on a stockpile of food and supplies, but everybody outside the wall and barbed wire, they know it? How long will it be? How long will it really take for a few very desperate people to find a way in and for them to take your stuff? Strong and trusted relationships and networks are everything. So, could you be a little more social on social networks like LinkedIn right now so that if your employment has a hiccup and you need to find a new job that you have some better connections down the line? Could you have a couple neighborhood barbecues this summer, just in the next couple months, to strengthen those relationships right on your own street, just so that you can look out for each other? Personally, I don't think that in 2022 that we will see a depression or hyperinflation or a zombie apocalypse. But certainly, recessionary times are coming. Be prepared and not scared. And please hit that like button and subscribe, and also share this content with other people. And I hope to see you on the next video.